Hey guys, welcome back to First Time in the Ring. If you listened to the last episode, you know how to get involved in 4-H or FFA. But the next big question is, what animal should you actually start with? This is where a lot of people get stuck, because everyone around you seems like they already know what they're doing and you don't want to pick the wrong thing. So today, we're going to break it down simply, what your options are, what's realistic for beginners, and how to choose what's actually right for you. I'm going to be honest with you the whole way through, because your first project can either make you love showing or make you want to quit. This is about choosing your first show animal based on your time, your budget, and your experience level, not just what you might think looks cool. Why does this even matter? Your first year sets a tone for everything. If you pick something too hard or too expensive or too time consuming, you're going to get overwhelmed really quickly. But if you pick something that fits right into your life already, you'll learn faster, gain confidence, and actually enjoy the process. Your goal for the first year, the goal isn't to win. It's to keep going. It's to hopefully fall in love with the experience and learn and want to keep going. So there are 4 things you need to ask yourself if you want to start showing. 1, the time. How much time can you actually put into this animal every single day? 2, your budget. How much can you afford? Because every animal costs something different. 3 is help. How much support do you have? How many people are going to be there helping you get through it? And 4 is a personality question. Are you patient, competitive, or nervous? Those all make a difference in what animal you're going to be choosing. So we're going to do a quick breakdown of what each animal is and how much they cost and how much time and effort you're going to put into them. Personally, I'm going to start with my favorite for a beginner, and that is a goat. So for a goat, it can be anywhere from about $300 to $1,200 for a starter. $1,200 is like a super high-end goat for a starter. You can still definitely find goats that are $200, $300. I found whenever I showed goats, I just paid super cheap for them and then would just work them as much as I could. Like when my little sister started showing goats, she had a pretty cheap goat. It was like $200 and we would just go through and work with it and try our best until she finally got better at it. The equipment for goats are about $150 to $400, and to feed a goat, it's about $100 to $200 a month. I think that goats are really great for people who are just starting, especially little kids, because they're small, they're not as intimidating. Little kids can handle a goat a lot easier than they can handle a sheep or a steer or a pig. They have all their hands on the animal, actually. You don't really touch the animal, and a sheep is just a little bit bigger for a kid that's small. So the second best option, I believe, is a sheep. I love showing sheep. I showed sheep almost my whole life, and they were my favorite to show. So the animal here can cost anywhere. It's about the same as a goat, about $300 to $1,500. Obviously, you can find cheaper lambs. You can find more expensive lambs. You can start with a bum lamb. Those are a lot easier to find than bum like goats or anything. The equipment for them is about $200 to $500, and the feed is also about $100 to $200 a month. I don't know if I mentioned this with the goats, but they're both in the same category. The time that you're going to need to put into these lambs and goats is about 30 to 60 minutes every day. So about half an hour to an hour. The other thing about lambs and goats is that you need to have a companion with them, or else they stress themselves out. So if you're going to buy one goat, you need to buy 2, or if you're going to buy 1 lamb, you need to buy 2 lambs, because they're pack animals and they like to be together. And if you don't, it makes it a really hard time trying to make weight with that animal. Some of the pros to a sheep is they're easier to handle. Usually they're not as jumpy as a goat. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're calmer. But they are also super good for beginners. They aren't huge animals. They're not as big as a steer. Your hands are still on them. But I just think that a goat would be better because they're smaller and easier for smaller kids to handle. If you are a slightly bigger kid, maybe you're starting when you're older, have an older kid that's maybe 10 or 11, a sheep would be a fine start. It's just easier for a little 8-year-old to start with a little goat and not a lamb that weighs more than them. So the next thing is a pig. This is more like in the middle. So for a pig, they're slightly more expensive. They can cost from $500 to $2,000, which is quite a bit of a jump between the sheep and the goats, where yes, you can buy cheaper pigs, but if you want one of those more show-looking hogs, you have to go through and you have to pay a little bit more for them, and not just any kind of hog. For pigs, you have to have a specific waterer. You have to go through and make sure that the building they're kept in is nice. They can't dig holes. They're kept cool. It's just a little bit more effort that you have to put in, especially now that they're going through and there's so much more to pigs than there was before. I remember when pigs used to be the easiest thing ever, and now they've changed so much, and so it's a little bit harder to do. Feed usually costs a little bit more for them just because they are bigger animals. They weigh a lot more. It was 160 pounds, and that's a heavier lamb. Where a pig, that wouldn't even make weight. Most like county fairs, they're about 200, 210, 235 is what their minimum weights for pigs are. And so the feed is just going to cost more because it's a bigger animal and you're feeding it. You have to spend a little bit more time with these animals just because you're not going in there with a halter. You don't have anything you're holding on to the pig to. You got to whip, and you got to teach them how to walk around, how to not run around, how to walk whenever you need to, how to go through and keep their head up, and how to turn whenever you need to turn. Where when you're holding a lamb, you go through and you stand there. You just pretty much always stand the opposite side of the judge. With a pig, it's a little different because you're walking around a bunch. You're doing turns. You're going around. You have to teach them how to stay away from the fence, and it's a little bit more effort. But if you're willing to put in that more effort and you have the time to do it, then it would be a perfectly fine start. Pigs are a lot of fun, but they require a little bit more consistency. Like with sheep and goats, usually they're bred to brace, and so you don't have to really teach them how to brace. A pig isn't bred to keep its head up. It's not bred to walk it beautifully and stuff. And so how much you work with that pig shows a little bit quicker. And then lastly is for cattle. Cattle are expensive. I have shown calves before. My sister showed calves. It's not a cheap thing to get into. The animal itself, especially right now with cattle prices, you can't even buy a farm calf or I just saw a bottle baby for $1,000. So it's more expensive to get into. You feed them for a lot longer. You do a lot more things with them. You have to rinse them all the time. You got to try to get them to grow hair. And it requires a little bit more consistency with them. So the animal can be between $2,000 to $10,000, which is a lot of money. Like I said, I just saw that bottle baby bull calf and it was $1,000. And I was like, wow, that's crazy with steer prices these days. The equipment is a lot more complex than you need for a sheep or a goat. All you need is a stand for them. And you can find those pretty cheap. For a pig, you don't even need that. You have to have a steer chute. It's so hard to show a steer without a steer chute. Unless you can borrow one from a friend or you can figure out how to budget that correctly. Steers cost a lot of money right off the bat. That, and then you're feeding them a ton more. You got a 1,500-pound animal, and it's $300 to $600 a month in feed, depending on what you're feeding. Steers take at least 2 hours or more a day. Not only do you want them to grow hair, so you're rinsing them constantly and trying to keep them cold, but you're also going through and having to work with an animal that is much, much bigger than you. And you got to teach them how to keep their head up, how to stand still. You got to have people able to walk around you and touch them all while you're holding them there in the whole 9 yards. So it takes a lot of commitment. The one thing about them is that they are high commitment. They do make a lot more money back than any of the other animals do because it's a whole steer. It's not just part of a steer. It's the entire thing. And so it's a lot more. But it's at the very beginning, it's a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. But if you have a really strong support system that kind of knows what they're doing, or you're able to find help with it, you could start off with a steer and get right into it. Especially if you already say you're using ranch cattle and you buy a calf from your dad or your mom or somebody, it's a little bit easier to do it that way because you can start when they're a little bit younger. But if you're going out trying to buy club calves immediately, it's a lot all of a sudden all at one time. The number one thing with trying to pick out an animal and knowing what to show is that people start too big. They don't start with what they should start. They start by overspending on things that they don't need. Don't go out and buy a $1,200 lamb your very first show. People go through and they like to underestimate how much time it's going to be to put into these animals. They're like, oh, it'll be quick for the sheep. They take a lot of time to actually look nice out there. You don't want to just go out there and just look like you know what you're doing. You want to go out there and look like, yeah, I put my time and I put my effort into this animal, and it takes more than just 20 minutes every day. The one thing that they say is that the best showmen aren't the ones with the most expensive animal or the best looking animals. It's the ones who show up every single day. It's the ones that, yeah, they don't think they're going to win. But they still get up every day and they go work their butt off with their animal. Because at the end of the day, especially when I'm looking at it, I think that showmanship is 10 times more important than any market class. Anybody can win showmanship. It's an all game. It's not just, oh, you have the more expensive calf, so you won. No, I went through in my junior year that year. I showed a calf for the first time and I got reserve champion we had a decently sized class. And this is just at our county fair. I was doing the catch a calf with the National Western. And so they put me in the senior showmanship because they didn't have a National Western class. And I went out there but with my catch a calf, I was able to get reserve champion in showmanship, which was a big step for me because I've never shown a steer before. This was my first one. It was a full class of people. And even there was a girl that I beat and she wasn't happy about it because she was like, my heifer wasn't walking. Anyone can win showmanship. It's not you have the more expensive animal, so that's why you won showmanship. Why you won. You got to also set realistic expectations for yourself. You might not win, and that's totally okay. If I went out there and I won that first time, it doesn't mean anything. I lost for so many years before I started even winning. But you got to understand you might not win and your animal might not cooperate, and that's okay. Sometimes animals have bad days too. They can feel when you're stressed. They understand it all. And you're going to mess up. That's completely normal. It's so normal to mess up. There's no one out there that's perfect, no matter what you do. But right now, especially when you are just starting, focus on learning, improving, and getting comfortable in a ring. You will learn a lot quicker than anybody else who's choosing to sit on their butt and not do anything. Everybody who is winning has started somewhere. The only difference between them and everybody else is that they didn't quit. They kept going and they kept pushing. If you're trying to decide what to start with, remember, the best first project isn't the one that wins. It's the one that keeps you coming back year after year. This has been First Time in the Ring. I'll see you in the next episode.